Hello there, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Legal Fees 101, Paying the Right Price for Your Justice. I am your host, Joel Comerford. I am one of the consultants here at Lawpath. For those who don't know me, I will be sharing an email after the webinar with the slides. And for those who are new, every single webinar episode that we record here today will be uploaded to the Lawpath YouTube website. So just go ahead and type in Lawpath on YouTube, and you should see today's webinar as well as everything else we've done in the past. Should be uploaded in within 2 or 3 hours or first thing the following day. I'd like to begin by just saying, well, I guess asking, what does justice mean to you? Is it as simple as commit a crime, face the consequences, or is it something more personal? Maybe you trusted the legal system to work in your favor, only to be met with frustration and unexpected costs. Or perhaps you've avoided seeking legal advice altogether because you fear the price tag. It's very fair. At Lawpath, we believe justice should be fair, accessible, and affordable. Allow me to open with a little bit of a story as well. So, when I started at Lawpath many years ago, one of our lawyers once told me about an elderly woman, beloved in her community, who needed to sell her cafe after decades of what is essentially hard work. What should have been a straightforward contract turned into a $15,000 legal bill, one she simply couldn't afford. And the lawyer was devastated for her, as any of us would be. The next day, he actually called to apologize to her and just get a bit more advice, give a bit more advice or see what he could do, essentially, only to find that she had already found someone, a better solution, and the other firm had helped her with the same care and the same service, but without the outrageous legal fee. And you know, naturally, you all know where this is going. That firm was indeed Lawpath that assisted her, and 2 months later, that same lawyer had joined Lawpath, and he is still with us today. So, yeah, that's what justice looks like for us over here at Lawpath. And today we're here to show you how to get the legal support you need, essentially, without breaking the bank. Now, if you've attended our webinars or you've used Lawpath's legal marketplace, you already know Damin Murdock, our highly rated senior lawyer. For those new to Lawpath, we're privileged to have him leading us in today's session. With decades of experience and a track record of handling high-profile business cases, Damon is a trusted expert in commercial, employment, startup law, and so much more. He holds a 5-star rating from our 300 client reviews on our Meet the Lawyers page, where our top legal minds support legal advice plan clients every day. Stay tuned later on when we will have a Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, and you can go ahead and put in questions throughout in the chat box down below. All right, so without further ado, we will go ahead and get started. Please take it away, Damon.
Thank you very much, Joel. Can everybody see me? All right, great. Let me get my camera going. All right, well, thank you very much for joining. Today's a little bit different. Normally, we are talking about legal areas, but today we're actually talking about lawyers generally. So, what we want to do is give you a little bit of guidance on how to hire a lawyer, how to keep your costs down, what you're probably going to be looking for in a lawyer, and the kind of lawyer that you might need. So, for instance, most commercial lawyers don't practice in personal injury. We don't practice in insurance necessarily. We don't do crime. So you've got to choose the lawyer that knows and has experience in what you're trying to do. It's not uncommon that I do a lot of construction cases. So you see someone approaching me and they've hired another law firm, and that law firm has then hired a barrister, and then they've racked up $30,000, which is something that I normally might charge $4,000 for. And the reason is that lawyer that's taken on the case doesn't know where to start. So step one is they have to do legal research. They have to draft a letter of advice. They're not comfortable with the most recent cases They then have to hire a barrister who has expertise in the area, and that's where the costs go. But if you hire a lawyer that it's their bread and butter and that's what they do all day, every day, then you don't have to pay for the cost of a letter of advice. You don't need to pay for extensive legal research because that lawyer already knows exactly what needs to be done. So it's finding a lawyer that practices in that area of law. Now, the other thing is, how do you brief a lawyer? If you were to send me an email that you've just taken a series of 26 emails from Outlook and you just applied them as attachments to an email to me saying, I'm in a legal dispute. Here's all the emails back and forth between the two parties. Can you please draft up a claim for court for me or draft a letter of demand? Now, what that means is that when I look at that, I know that I have to download each and every one of those emails. I've then got to open up each one of those emails. I then have to open up or download each one of the annexures to those e emails. I then have to go and prepare pretty much a chronology of the beginning to the end of what the dispute's all about. And just starting, just looking at what your case is about might take me about 3 or 4 hours. Um, Alternatively, you could get all those emails, you could print them, collate them in chronological order, and attach them as one PDF with page numbers in the bottom right-hand corner that just goes from top to finish. And I can read those 26 emails within probably 7 minutes because lawyers can read very quickly, and we don't have to open and close or download anything. It's just the one document that just flows through it. You could then throw it into AI that can draft a chronology for you. So that's just an idea of how to actually brief a lawyer. You need to understand um, to make it a way that is really easy for the lawyer to look at and quote. And that's why a lot of times lawyers take a while to get back to you is because they open up an email and they say, oh, this is going to take 3 hours and I haven't even quoted yet for it. Um, I don't have 3 hours set aside just to look at this without charging anything. And it kind of goes into the too hard basket because they're already busy with other work. So the first thing is making sure that you bundle up whatever you're looking to get done in a nice organized manner that's really easy for a lawyer to look at and understand what the case is about. Number two, it's worthwhile for you to possibly Google search or use ChatGPT or something similar to figure out what area of law you're actually falling within. Is it workers' compensation? Well, if it's workers' compensation, all employment lawyers don't do workers' comp. You might need a workers' comp lawyer. Is it a traffic accident? Well, that's negligence, more likely personal injury. Law firms do negligent cases. Is it corporate law, which is like the Corporations Act, disputes between shareholders, misappropriation of funds, breach of director duties, or is it commercial law, buy and sell of a business? That's a different area of law, and not all commercial lawyers do corporate law. And then whether it's litigation, whether you're going to be going to court because it's a dispute, do you want to hire a business lawyer to draft a letter of demand for you who doesn't necessarily have any experience in going to court and isn't a litigator? So these are all the things to look at. And what kind of lawyer really depends on what their past experience is. And so you want to look up the area of law, figure out what kind of lawyer you probably need, uh, collate it all in a organized fashion, and then find the lawyer and call them up and get a quote from them. Now, what we'll do is we'll talk about how to find the right lawyer. So you want to look at their formal qualifications. So the way you do that is obviously you go to their LinkedIn profile or their website and you'd see, okay, well, what university did they go to? How long ago did they go to university? When did they become admitted as a solicitor? Are they admitted in the state that you're in, or do they only have experience in one of the states? How many years have they been practicing as a lawyer? How many years have they been a director or principal of a law firm if you're needing a senior person that has a lot of experience? Um, do they have a list of any cases that they've done in the past or examples of cases that they've done in the past which sound similar to yours? And so do they have industry specific knowledge? Um, look at where they've worked before, see what kind of law firms they've acted or worked at, um, and then you want to see how long what it's going to take for them to actually deliver the work for you. So that's just some of the things that you're normally going to be looking at to choose the right lawyer. But a lawyer is just like any other service partner, whether you're hiring a consultant, whether you're hiring your accountant, it's someone that you want to be able um, to believe in the sense that you want them to be on your side. You want them to know and have the confidence and knowledge of what you're trying to achieve, be able to understand your technology or being able to understand what your dispute's about. Um, and you want that lawyer to be able to listen to you, communicate with you, um, and work with you. Because when you're working on a large business transaction or a court case, you want someone that's flexible, someone that's going to be able to take your calls when you might not be available. So possibly after work hours or at lunchtime or early in the morning, things like that. So you want to be able to work with the lawyer and you want to be able to trust that lawyer. So it's important that you meet with them, you get a good vibe from that person as well. It's kind of like the castle. It's the vibe of things in the sense that you want the lawyer to be someone that you can trust and work with. Now, depending on the complexity of your case will depend on what kind of level or seniority of lawyer you need. So if you're doing a local court case that's under $100,000, you probably don't need a partner of a law firm or even a senior associate. If it's just a debt recovery matter, you might be able to choose a lawyer with only a couple years experience. Um, as the quantum of the case or quantum of the contract gets larger, that's normally where you're going to be wanting to get a more experienced lawyer, more senior. So if you're doing a capital raise of $500,000, you might be able to get a junior lawyer to draft a safe for you. But if you're doing a $10 million capital raise, you're probably going to want a senior lawyer that knows all the ins and outs and tricks to what the investor might be putting into the contracts and what possible holes there could be to be able to identify what the issues actually are. And a junior lawyer might not be able to pick up on that because those holes and traps only become apparent from the experience that the lawyer has previously experienced in past cases. Same thing with litigating if you go into court. If it's a district court matter of $600,000, you probably want a senior associate working on it. But if it's a Supreme Court matter and it's going to be significantly more money, you're probably going to want the partner working on the matter and doing all the strategy for you and working out a strategy with you. Now, generally speaking, legal fees they range significantly. They can go from $250 to an hour to $1,100 an hour or more. So to give you an example, a lot of times a junior lawyer might be 250 to $300 an hour. Lawyers charge in what's called 6-minute units. That means that if you talk to the lawyer for 8 minutes, they're going to charge you for 12. If you send them an email and they have to reply to the email and it only takes 3 minutes, they're going to charge you for 6 minutes. And the reason for that is that lawyers, even though it looks like they've just done a quick 2-line email, what they've probably done is they've had to review a document, check to make sure it's correct, draft the email, and then they have to take a file note, then they have to record their time, and then they have to, normally it involves more than just simply, here's your answer. They might have had a quick look at a past case, they might have had a quick look at something just to make sure what they're saying is true. So what you actually see on paper isn't necessarily what it actually took in preparing that even 2-line email for you. Um, the other reason why they charge in 6-minute units is because if they're working on a particular matter and they get distracted from that matter and then they have to go and draft an urgent email to you, for them to get back into the case that they were working on takes a bit of time. So that's just the nature of the industry and how they charge. Junior lawyers, about $250 to $300 an hour, could be up to $350 an hour. Junior lawyers normally someone that's about 2 years experience or less. You then get into the associate level. The associate level is normally around 3 to 7 years experience. They normally charge around 400 to 600, depending on which firm you're at and which firm you have engaged. And then you got senior associate, normally at around the $500 to $600, and then you got a partner, normally around the 550, 600 to well, sky's the limit really, but normally it's about 1100 in the top tier firms. Now, if you look at hourly rates between small firms and large firms, small firms, their hourly rates normally range from about 250 to 650. And then when you get into the mid tier, it's normally about 350 to about 800. And then when you get into the top tier, it's normally about 400 to 11 or 1200 an hour. Um, and then barristers can charge significantly greater amounts. And so the question then becomes, well, do you want to hire a top tier law firm to draft your letter of demand? Well, possibly if your case is about a case that's involving millions of dollars and you want to get a top tier law firm to bring that action for you. But by hiring the top tier law firm, the really big ones, you're paying for it. Their hourly rates are higher. They normally have a team of lawyers working on your file, so you'll have a junior lawyer doing all the background research. You'll have a senior, maybe associate assisting in the drafting. You then have the principal lawyer reviewing it. And so the more people working on your file, the more money it's generally going to cost you. Whereas a smaller law firm, they have lower hourly rates. Normally, it's just one lawyer primarily working on your file because it's a smaller matter that doesn't need a lot of lawyers working on it. So that's generally how lawyers charge in terms of hourly rates. You then have to look at a lot of lawyers will charge for the disbursement, so filing fees, doing a land title search, doing an ASIC search, doing or having court filing fees. Some charge for stationery per page, for binders, for postage, and it really does depend on what the actual letter of engagement says. Now, we have what's called new law, and new law is effectively fixed fee legal services. Basically, law firm or law path fits into the new law area. We also effectively have software as a service, and that service is the legal services. So Lawpath is a new law firm, which is built within the SaaS product, which offers legal services. And the benefit of going through Lawpath is that it's a fixed fee service. So what what you're quoted is what you get. Now, because there's a fixed fee service, this is what you also have to be careful of, is that fixed fee services normally have a very specific scope of works. So it might be that we will draft your contract based on your instructions, and then we'll have a conference with you. We will make any amendments as discussed during the conference, and then we'll deliver you the final version of the contract, full stop. If you want the lawyer to then negotiate the terms with the lawyer on the other side, that will probably be a different scope of works. So you got to be careful, and you got to read the scope of works very carefully to know what actually is and is not included. So it might be a sale business. It might be you've just asked them to draft the contract. So you ask them to draft the contract for the sale of business. That doesn't mean settling the sale. Settling the sale might mean transferring a lease or having a lease assigned. It does what's called the adjustments. You're looking at, some of the rental payments, employees, wages, things like that, and adjusting them to, let's say it settles on the 15th of March. The seller is liable for all the costs up to the 14th of March, and the buyer is liable for all the associated costs up to from the 15th of March onward. So you got to adjust halfway through the month for electricity, for rent, for employee salaries and wages and super and all this other stuff. So if you're looking for a lawyer to do buy and sell business, you want to make sure that it's from a start to finish, everything's included as one if that's what you're looking for. Now, when we look at getting the right lawyer, I touched upon it before. Lawyers should be transparent about everything. They have a fiduciary duty to you to be honest, integral, and of good character. And they have to act in your best interests. So even though there are circumstances where lawyers and clients get in disputes, a lot of that is over fees. And that's why a lawyer is a very highly regulated industry. and there's an obligation to disclose your costs up front, how you're going to charge. You have to estimate your costs up front as well. You have to give a range of fees generally for different stages. So that transparency that lawyers give is actually a mandatory law that they have to comply with under the uniform law. And so that's why when you are going to hire a lawyer, if you're going to be doing work more than $3,000, you'll normally get what's called a cost agreement. The cost agreement talks about what the terms are, about hiring other people, using trust funds, and then there's a disclosure statement, and the disclosure statement talks about the hourly rates, the estimated costs, and so on. And at the back, they normally have a document that's called Know Your Rights. And Know Your Rights is again a statutory requirement for lawyers to attach to their cost agreements and disclosure statements, which basically says that if you ever want to challenge a lawyer on their legal fees, there's basically a four-step process. Step one is you contact the lawyer, you make your complaint, you try to negotiate a resolution to that. If you can't, you can refer the matter to your local law society or law institute, where you can then go and ask for a mediation. And then after the mediation, if it's still not resolved, normally the lawyer will do what's called a cost assessment. And a cost assessment is effectively printing every single page, every email, every document, every affidavit, everything, sending it over to a lawyer that specializes in costings, and they literally count the pages, count the words, and do an assessment of what the value of that work is, looking at the complexity of the case, the research, things like that. And then they issue a certificate that then says this is the value of the work. And once they issue that certificate, the lawyer can then go get that authorized from the Supreme Court. And then once that's done, it's effectively a judgment. So a lawyer doesn't actually have to sue for their legal fees. They effectively just get that cost assessment approved, and now it is as good as a judgment. Now, the client can challenge the cost assessment, and they do have an opportunity to respond to it, and put submissions on why they don't believe those costs are fair or reasonable, or the assessment was impartial and things like that, or it wasn't impartial. So that's just getting into the transparency aspect. But then you also just want to have someone that understands your case and is looking to work for you and do the best for you. And that's why we were talking about having a strong relationship. And it's really understanding what you're trying to achieve. If you hire a lawyer that's not very good at technology, they're not going to necessarily know intellectual property, confidentiality, privacy laws, transfer of data, the license, the flow of money of where it's going to go if you're integrating um, APIs into other software. So you want to be able to have a lawyer that can draft up your contract, understanding how the actual technology works, because you can get these really clunky contracts that don't actually effectively work because no client will ever sign off on it because it's 86 pages. And you just want something really simple like a 14-page document. So it's really working with what you're trying to achieve, what kind of lawyer that's going to be able to achieve that for you. Do they have the industry knowledge? Do they have experience? Are they commercial, or are they a black letter lawyer? Commercial lawyer versus black letter lawyer. Commercial lawyer is just basically saying, look, I can put in this clause. It's going to take up an extra 2 pages. The risk is that if this happens, you could be sued. You're not going to have that there to protect you. Um, but from a commercial perspective, it's going to be a lot easier for your client to sign off on the contract because it loses an extra 2 pages. It's nice, short, and you can negotiate it easily. Whereas a black letter lawyer will say, well, without that, you're exposing yourself to risk, and we don't recommend you're exposing yourself to risk because you could lose the case if this ever became an issue. And so it really looks at, well, what do you want? Do you want a document that protects you, but not protects you to the best of its ability, in the sense that it doesn't protect you from everything, but it gives you a good base? Or do you want a contract that's going to be an absolute ironclad document? Um, an example of an ironclad document is there's a law firm in Sydney that's prepared their own mortgage documents and lending documents and things like that. And they act for what we call third tier and fourth tier lenders. So it's not your big four banks. It's normally people that need bridging loans or can't get funds from anywhere else. So they go to these third tier, fourth tier lenders, and they normally will lend you, let's say, 100,000, but they'll have a establishment fee of $15,000, and then they'll have a management fee on a monthly basis of another $1,000, and then they'll have an interest rate of, let's say, 12 or 24% or per year, or 2% per month. And so when they actually transfer you the 100,000 that you got, you actually end up with 80,000 because they've charged the establishment fee and then the minimum interest rate and then the management fee and things like that. And that document's been challenged in court many times, and they've been successful every time because it's an ironclad contract. And it's very, very hard to get out of it. And that's because they are black letter lawyers. They've done everything they can to make it ironclad because they know when they're third, fourth tier lenders, the interest rate's so high that people are going to challenge it and try to get out of it. And people are also going to try to challenge it and get out of it because they've entered into effectively a bad deal. Um, so it's really looking at what you actually need. Um, and is it an ironclad document? And if so, you really want someone that really specializes in that area. Things that you want to look at. So we talked about the scope of works, but you also want to know of how are they going to deliver it? What's the process involved? What's the timing of everything? So a lawyer might say, yeah, I can do that. And then you find out that their turnaround time's 30 days, but you actually want it in 7. So those are just some of the things that you want to look at as well. Or just making sure you ask your lawyer questions. Whatever you don't know, you want to ask. So if I'm going to court, how long is it going to take? What are the costs going to be? What are the steps involved? Um, what are the risks? What are the potential issues that could arise? Do I have prospects of success? Do they have prospects of success? Is there anything else that I should be considering? Are there any other cases within cases that I need to consider, like discovery, something called security for costs? Security for costs is interesting. That's basically saying, if you are a company and you're going to sue in court in Australia, then the court, well, the defendant could make an application for security for costs, which basically says, we believe that we're going to defend these proceedings. And if we defend these proceedings and we're going to incur a lot of legal costs, it could be a situation where the plaintiff, the company that sued us, can't pay our legal costs, so they just wind up and we end up being out of pocket, even though we won the case and and got an order for them to pay our legal costs. They just closed down. So we want them to deposit our anticipated legal costs into the court before they can continue on with the case. And so that's called a security for costs application. It can be used as a sword, it can be used as a shield. So as a defendant to proceedings, it's always good to bring a security for costs application in the right circumstances, because that might stop the plaintiff from actually proceeding with the case if they don't have a very strong case. And for a defendant, it protects them in the event that the plaintiff gets wound up or doesn't have the funds to pay the defendant's legal costs. Um, Having a look at, we already talked about the fixed fee law firms. So if we look at Lawpath specifically, so we are all fixed fee. We don't do billable hours. The lawyers that we have a vast range of lawyers. We have ones that their expertise are generally in corporate, in commercial, in employment, in general business. But we don't really have insurance, personal injury, family, um, criminal lawyers. So we're what we would call a commercial law firm that deals with all that kind of area of law. And we have very, very competitive pricing. So when we look at if you're on the legal advice plan, so the legal advice plan is a subscription model whereby you can talk to a lawyer for up to 30 minutes on any matter, sometimes on the same day. And it's unlimited phone calls just to talk to a lawyer for 30 minutes. And if you're on that, you get a further discount to the actual legal fee. So if you end up on that plan and then you hire a lawyer, you then get a discount on the fees charged by that lawyer to draft the contract that you're talking about, for instance. Um, and so our pricing is very competitive. I'd say that it's probably around the $300 to $400 an hour if you were to calculate it as a hourly rate. But because we're fixed fee, when you get a quote and it says $1,200, it probably means it's about 3 to 4 hours to do the work. If you get a quote for 2,000, same thing. You kind of looking at, you can kind of guess how many hours it's going to take, and that's what the lawyer's doing. They're using a $350 to $400 hourly rate to give the quote. So they're saying it looks like it's going to take 3 to 4 hours. I'm going to go quote $1,200 for this. Now, we've already talked about how law or legal fees are charged. Obviously, it's a service, so it has GST on top of that. Um, and and then if you're looking for a fixed fee lawyer, it's a lot of times it's not necessarily transactional. It's normally one-off contracts. It's letters of demand. It's drafting will. It's drafting, reviewing a file, giving advice, things like that. So that's primarily where fixed fee comes in. If it starts to get into negotiating contracts and things like that, you might be able to get a lawyer to give a fixed fee, but they might cap the number of hours to negotiating at 2 to 3 hours, for instance. So you really have to just look at that scope of work. Um, Now, let's talk a little bit about how you actually hire a lawyer via Lawpath. So if you log into your Lawpath platform, you can request a quote from a lawyer. When you do the request a quote from a lawyer, box pops up. It asks you what area of law. It asks what you require. It asks you to upload different documents. And then you press the submission button. And then it goes off to Lawpath Legal, which is the law firm built within the technology. We then have a team that manages the area of law, and they look and see which lawyer would be most suitable based on the area of law and the matter generally. And then you'll get allocated a particular lawyer in law from Lawpath Legal, and then they will give you an answer. They'll set out their experience. They'll set out a high level what's required from their view. They'll then work what's included, what's not included, and specifically what's not included. They'll give you the fixed price fee for their professional services. They'll give a fixed price fee for the government fees and any other disbursements. And and then you can then press the button hire lawyer, or you'll have their contact details so you can message them through the Lawpath platform. And so there's a messaging chat where you can chat with them, or you can just pick up the phone and call them, or they might just simply call you. Um, Now, quick overview of general stats. So a lot of businesses have troubles getting a hold of lawyers or hiring lawyers. Sometimes it might be very intimidating. You might never have talked to a lawyer before. You don't really, you're afraid that you're just going to be charged for every phone call and every email. So you get concerned about how to actually hire them or how to approach them. And so that's essentially why Lawpath came into existence. It was basically to overcome that concern that people have about being charged for a phone call or email. It was about getting over or overcoming that issue of approaching a law firm and how to actually approach them. And it also deals with how to get a response. So Lawpath is streamlined so that when you make a request, you get an answer very quickly. Whereas a lot of law firms, if you send an email or if you put an online inquiry, the lawyer will get to it when they get to it. And there's not really a process to deal with inquiries or hiring or engaging with new clients. So it might get delayed quite a bit, and then there's a whole process of going through the scoping and the costings and things like that. And so Lawpath basically just streamlined the whole process. So if you're looking for someone quick, Lawpath would be the place to go. The legal advice plan, as I mentioned, it's unlimited phone calls with a lawyer for up to 30 minutes. You can get same day phone calls. Lawpath has a guarantee that if you're not happy after the first 30 days, you can terminate it. But basically what it is, you go into your system, you book in a consultation with the lawyer, you get to choose the lawyer, you get to choose the time. You then outline what your issue is or question is. You might have found something on ChatGPT or on the internet and you want to get clarification on it. It might be that you're trying to use a contract in the Lawpath platform, but you don't know which contract to use, or you want to insert a particular clause, or you don't know what a particular clause means, or it might just be generally you need help from an HR perspective, or you need help drafting a policy, or you need help with some kind of disputed matter. So you just lay that out in your consultation box where you're setting out what you want, and then within a day, generally you'll be on the phone with the lawyer, and they'll have a 30-minute consultation with you. If you still don't understand it, you can book in another call to talk to that lawyer, or you can hire the lawyer after that call to go and do some of the legal work for you. So the legal advice plan is basically there to give you guidance, assistance on a day-to-day basis. It's like having your own in-house legal counsel, but it doesn't really include putting pen to paper. It doesn't include drafting contracts. Um, it doesn't include giving specific letters of advice or anything like that. So there are limitations to the advice, but what it does, it's really about the practical guidance that you need on a day-to-day basis from a legal perspective, and that's what the legal advice plan is there for. And if you need something urgent, we're basically on-call lawyers, so you can book in the consultation, talk about it, hire the lawyer, get a job done right away. There's some new things. So it used to be that the legal advice plan was limited to only new issues. Now it's you can book in calls on the same issue, and you can do it over and over and over again. There are some fair use limitations, like if you clearly need to hire a lawyer to do something, but you're just phoning every day for 30 minutes for the next 2 weeks, there's going to be a limit where we've told you this already, we've already told you that, and so on, and that's where we might put a stop to it. But other than that, it's generally unlimited calls on anything you want to talk to. There's certain exclusions like tax, um, property specific transactions, anything personal in terms uh, of wills and estates, and family law and insurance and criminal. So those are the exclusions. But generally speaking, for your business, we got you covered. Some other things, we've recently just opened up the period of time. So it used to be that we only took the phone calls between around 12 and 3, but now we do it all day. So we have time up to 5, and if you book in before 10 a.m., you can normally get a lawyer on the same day. And then we have the guarantee, as I mentioned. It's if you're not happy after the 30 days, then you can terminate it. And that's just basically what it all covers. So if you sign up to the legal advice plan, you get access to our AI. Our AI is probably the most advanced legal AI in Australia. It's always reading questions and answers and developing its own knowledge based on all the documents that we're drafting and everything, so that the AI is um, is unique to Lawpath itself, using the data that Lawpath collates. You get access to over 400 or 500 legal templates, shareholders agreements, employment contracts, things like that. You have e-signing, so it's similar to a DocuSign, where you can take a document, sign it, or send it off to someone to sign. You can collaborate with your team within the platform, and then we also have virtual office. So if you're incorporating a new company, you want a registered office where all your mail goes. Lawpath can do the virtual office where the mail goes there, and then they'll scan it and send it over to you and upload it into your platform and send you an email notifying that you got mail. Um, and we do incorporating companies. So we do more than, I think, 6 or 10% of all companies incorporated in Australia is through Lawpath. And when you do that, you get all the legal documents you require as well. So that's all for now. What we're going to do is we're going to pass it back over to Joel, and then I'll jump in with your Q&As. So drop your questions into the Q&A, and I'll be back in a moment.
Thank you so much, Damon. Guys, I think Damon's pretty much summed up the legal advice plan pretty well. I'll just give an example of what we usually get when new clientele come by. It's either they're a bit concerned about, for example, legal advice plan's 12 months, and if you're a new business, how do you justify needing legal advice for 12 months, essentially. You might only need a lawyer for the first 2 or 3 months, and then once that's completed, or your your documentation's sorted, a little bit of advice on next steps are done, and then you think, I've got the wisdom and the autonomy now to go ahead and do my own thing. But at least if it is your first 1 to 3 years, we always like to say, you don't know what you don't know. I may have used this example in the past, but I always find it a good analogy. You may have been driving a car for 20 or 30 years and never been in an accident, touch wood. However, you are comforted at the back of your mind knowing that you do have that car insurance, and any old person could come by and, rear end you or something at any point. So you just don't know when something's going to come up. And if you're new to business and you feel like there's just a couple more things that you need to get your head around, at least having us to call whenever you want, however you want, whether video call, phone call, or even texting throughout the 12 months is always helpful. We're a click of a button. As Damon mentioned, there are some periods in which a lawyer may not get back to you straight away, or the firm might be busy. I know on Fridays, in particular, law firms tend to roll out a lot of information. So if you want to have a good weekend, you don't want something bad to happen right beforehand, and you need to call someone right then and there. With Lawpath, you can do that. You can book consultations Monday to Friday, whenever. The good thing about the Lawpath AI as well is that if you needed a little bit of information, maybe a quick consultation, but you don't have, nobody's available, you can hop on the platform and the Lawpath AI can maybe answer those smaller and shorter questions for you. When is the next BAS statement due? In regards to this state, what does this law require of me if in regards to hiring an employee or whatever it may be? So it's the can I justify 12 months? And I guess the other thing is what is the cost effectiveness? And I mean, again, Damon has been wonderful in displaying how much you would usually be charged for a lawyer. And if you're constantly needing amendments or updates to any kind of information that you're working through the lawyer, you don't necessarily know how much you're going to be charged or how long they will be working on something for you. With LawPath, you know what you're getting, when you're getting it, and how long you're getting it for. And we will be there to guide you along the entire process. So you'll never feel like you don't know what that other person, the lawyer, is doing. For all you know, they're in Acapulco sipping a margarita and saying they're working on a contract for you. I don't mean to make light of it, but you just never know these days. So if it's legal advice, then certainly um, we've displayed all the information that you need. However, if there are any questions that come up in the next couple of hours or tomorrow that you weren't able to conceive of now, please send it my way. I will be sending a bulk email out. I want you guys to bombard me with as much questions as possible, and hopefully I can get Damon to offer some advice on those questions as well. This next segment is for those who are interested in not only the legal advice, but also the other elements of LawPath services, which is the accounting as well as the tax. Now, if you were looking to register another company, maybe you have a few already, or you just want to start from scratch and someone's told you to, hey, check out LawPath, they have these free webinars, and you wanted to hit the ground running and do everything right and get all the strong foundations for your legal and tax, then certainly our bundling options are the best approach for you. As I mentioned, everything at Lawpath is a click of a button, and you get legal consultations, you get accounting consultations, and then we will also assist you with your BAS and tax, and then the financial year reporting too. We also have a great service with our tax, which gives you $100 off your personal tax returns as well. So we just have an incentive on top of incentive. If you want further information about this, by all means, read the information that we have on our website. But if you want a human touch, if you want to hear it from a human, then here I am. I know some people, there are some detractors out there who aren't fond of the AI, but we try to keep it in the parameters of get some information here, but it's always best to speak to a professional in the flesh or over the phone. In the next slide, we have a 30% off quarterly option for our legal advice now. So outright, it's $1,668 for legal advice for a year. It's the same with their accounting. Now, if you wanted to try the quarterly option, it's usually 587. So it's a bit more expensive, comes to about 2,100 at the end of the year, but it's a great cost-effective way to budget. And I should make this extremely clear. All of our plans are 100% tax deductible. You're not going to get 60% back. You're not going to get 80% back. It is 100% tax deductible. Now, with the 30% off quarterly discount, you can get the unlimited legal consultations, the entire plan that Damon outlined earlier, for only $375.90 per quarter. 4 quarters in a year, $375, 3 installments, 100% tax deductible. It's a steal. If you have any interest in that at all, please in the chat box there, just give me a capital YES. I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you after this and send you some more information. And also keep in mind there will be a big email with the slides from today's presentation as well as the offer involved as well.